Hello and welcome to my channel Informator. In this video I'm going to look at a very interesting article from a Norwegian web page called forskning, which means research basically. And the title of the article is "Was there a Viking Age in Norway 2000 years before the Vikings?" And then we have to do the Viking Age because it's from the Bronze Age. And the subtitle is "Maybe people from Norway went to the Mediterranean Ocean with Viking ships already for 3000 years ago." And the illustration at the top here is from what we call in Norway helleristning, which is a kind of stone carving. They are from the Bronze Age and are found many places in Norway. These stone carvings, they show big ships. And previously, archaeologists thought that these big ships, they were symbolic. But now they're starting to think that perhaps these are depictions of big ships, and each of these vertical lines represents a pair of rowers. And if that is the case, then you see this would have been a large ship with like maybe up to 100 crew. Previously, archaeologists have thought that they were using this ship maybe more locally and that they probably wasn't so large and it was more symbolic. But now they're starting to believe that actually they were probably for 3000 years ago in Norway as in Denmark. It was pretty much the same culture. They were quite more advanced than we have thought, and we're probably sailing all around Europe and even into the Mediterranean, perhaps all the way to Egypt. As we can see, at 90% of all the stone carvings, or what we call helleristninger in Norway, from the Bronze Age, there's depictions of ships. Big ships and small ships. And the question that archaeologists are asking themselves is, why was people in Norway so very interested in ships? And as this paragraph says, that when I was taught about Bronze Age history in school, we thought that these ships, the teachers would tell us that these ships were mythological images of ships on the way to the land of the dead, as some kind of religious imaging. But now there are certain things. Actually, we think these depictions is depictions of real ships in representative sizes. And that would mean that several of these ships would be as large as some of the largest ships that the Vikings were using like 2000 years later. And all of these helleristninger, this is from Skjeberg in Østfold, which is really close to where I live. And you find these stone carvings at this kind of flat rock surfaces at places with views towards the ocean. And a lot of these stone carvings has been discovered just recently, because many of them have been covered with soil and are being rediscovered as some people are starting to look more systematically for them. As you can see, at some of the ships we even have something that looks like a dragon's head. And what does that remind you of? It reminds of the dragon ships from the Viking Age. And here in the article, it says that archaeologists now think that some of these ships might have traveled all the way to the Egypt of the pharaohs. Christian Christiansen, which is an archaeologist, is saying that in the Bronze Age, the world was globalized for the first time. He claims that the people in Scandinavia for 3,000 years ago was definitely a part of that globalization in the late Bronze Age. Lena Melheim, she's a Norwegian archaeologist, and she claims that I think it's likely that the Norwegians or the Norse people living in the north went with ships all the way to the Mediterranean Sea for over 3,000 years ago. Some colleagues would disagree, she says, but I think it's very likely. We know that the people in the north were getting goods from the southern Europe, and that they were very capable seafarers. Therefore, it's very likely that they have traveled out in the world themselves and bought the goods all over the coast of Europe and in the coast of the Mediterranean, all the way to Greece and Egypt. And then they compare the Bronze Age with the Viking Age and say that both were maritime communities, maritime cultures. Yes, so a bit more about when the Bronze Age was. It was about 3,000 years ago. In Norway, 3,700 years ago to 2,500 years ago. So it was a very long period of time. And here it says, we know that just both ships, houses, weapons and clothes, and a lot of other stuff was very similar what we think about the Viking Age. The exception was that the Bronze Age people, they didn't have iron, but that was the main difference between the technology level of the Bronze Age people 3,000 years ago and the Vikings 1,000 years ago. Just iron, that's the main difference. Other than that, clothing, agriculture, houses, ships, a lot of similarities. They build big burial mounds like in the Viking Age. They have like these big long houses. So it's a very stable culture that lasts from 3,000 years ago and all the way until through the Viking Age, basically. At least there's a lot of similarities between the Viking Age and the Norse Bronze Age culture. Here's just an anecdote that when the first Norwegian scientists started to examine ships on stone carvings, they thought that they had to be Vikings that had made this carving, as all the ships were looked so similar to the Viking ships. But now we know they weren't Viking ships, they were actually very similar ships, just 2,000 years older. Yes, and here's an example of what we call in Norway røys, gravrøys, which is actually a burial mound made by rocks. So they would bury a person like a chieftain, and they would pile huge mounds of big rocks over them, and this mound, it would be visible from the sea. It would be like kind of a landmark and show status. And in the area where I live in Norway, there's a lot of these røyser. So most of them lies in forest now and are not visible from the sea, but in the Bronze Age the sea level was higher and the forests were probably not there, so these mounds would be visible from the sea. Yes, and this is where the articles start to get very interesting. Here they discuss these lines on the Bronze Age ships. And they say that they are now quite sure that each of these lines, vertical lines, represent a person. These ships were not sailed or rowed, they were paddled. So they would have like huge paddles, like a gigantic canoe. And perhaps each of these lines represents two paddlers, one on each side. These are stone carvings representing different periods. So these are the older ones, and these are the younger. So it's very interesting to see that the older ones are actually the largest ships, while the younger ones, here you can really see the dragon heads. So it's very quite similar to what we know from the Viking Age with the dragon heads on the ships. And here you even see depictions of horned people. They're probably some kind of ornamental helmets that they were wearing. And here's some more information about the Bronze Age and how they're making bronze. But the most interesting things are the question about how many people was in this cruise. So, in the Swedish county of Bohuslän, which is the south of where I live, there are registered more than 10,000 depictions of ships on stone carvings. And it's very interesting. Here you can see depictions also of chariots. So we know that the Bronze Age cultures in the Mediterranean, like the Egyptians and other cultures, used war chariots. But here we see that either the people in Norway and Denmark and Sweden also used war chariots, or chariots in some form, or perhaps they saw these are like travel descriptions, and they were depicting what they saw when they were traveling in the Mediterranean Ocean. Either way, it's interesting. So the large ships, if you count the lines, they would have like 50 lines. Some of the even larger ones have 60 or 70 lines. And if one line actually is two people, like one on each side, then you can double that and you have like 120 or 140 people, which is big ships. Yes, and here is a very fascinating thing. That's that the oldest ships were the largest. So this is from 1600 BCE. The newer stone carvings, the ships are getting smaller actually. And this is from like 500 BCE. And if you know about Mediterranean Bronze Age history, you know that 1200 BCE there was a huge collapse in several Bronze Age cultures in the Mediterranean, like the Minoans and the Mycenaeans and the Hittites. Several of these huge Bronze Age cultures collapsed at this time. Basically only the Egyptians survives. So there are stories about sea people in the Egyptian hieroglyphs, that the sea people were attacking. Could there be that the sea peoples were actually Vikings or Bronze Age Norsemen? I don't think you can rule it completely out. I know it's not the mainstream theory for now, but we know that the Egyptians have like amber in Bronze Age grave findings, and the amber, you know, it's a trade good. It's coming from the north. Yes, and one of the really interesting things. Here's a boat that were found in a, what you call it, myr, wetlands, bog, Danish bog, It was quite well preserved, and then when they have reconstructed it, they see that it has the same shape as the ships that are depicted on the stone carvings, with this very characteristic. Yeah, you see, it's the same. It's the same shape from the stone carvings, with these elongated boards at the end of the ship. So we know that they built ships like this. So it's quite certain that that these ships that we are finding on the stone carvings, they were depictions of real ships in real size. And just this boat, it would have a crew of 22 people. And this is a stone carving from Altafjorden, fjord of Alta in Finnmark, which is really, really far north. It's almost at the North Pole. It's the farthest north you can come in Norway. It's way beyond the Arctic Circle. And here you can see the same types of ships and large crew. Really, really interesting. So this seafaring culture reached all the way to the top of northern Norway. And then there's some more stuff about how the longhouses, we know from like the Viking Age, built on a very long building traditions going back to the Bronze Age, like going back 2,000 years basically, or longer. Yes, this is really, really cool. This bead is very important. It's a glass bead. It's from Egypt, and this is found Denmark. And this person was buried 3,300 years ago, and it has a glass bead from Egypt. And in Egyptian graves from the same period, we find amber. So you see, glass beads from Egypt in Denmark, and amber from Denmark in Egypt. They were trading with each other 3,300 years ago. That's really, really cool. That's a reconstruction of the cloth of the girl or the woman in this grave. Yeah, I think I end it there. It's more in the articles. Here you can see how they were making flint knives, inspired by like Mediterranean style bronze daggers. Of course, the Bronze Age ended, and there was a lot of troubles when the supply of bronze stopped. The main point I wanted to make in this article is 2,000 years before the Vikings, people from the north, from the Nordic countries, built huge ships and sailed all throughout the coast of Europe, and quite possibly all the way to Egypt. And perhaps, this is speculation, but perhaps some of the sea peoples that ended the late Bronze Age culture in the Mediterranean 1200 years BCE, perhaps they were Vikings, Bronze Age Vikings, raiding all through the Mediterranean. Who knows? At least they traded. That we know for sure. Okay, this has been Informator, and I am Tor. And if you like this video, please press like. That way more people can find it. And if you want to see more videos from me, consider subscribing. Wish you all the best. Have a nice day.